Coming up today on the Political Breakfast podcast, the endorsements roll in for Democratic nominee for Georgia Governor Keisha Lance Bottoms. But what do those endorsements really mean, and will they translate into money? Tharon and Brian weigh in. Plus, are state Republicans having second thoughts about the redrawing of district lines? And gas prices will start creeping up again over the next few days. Who stands to win or lose in the world of politics? I'm Lisa Rayam. The Political Breakfast podcast is up next. Welcome back to another edition of Political Breakfast, heard right here on WABE. I'm Lisa Rayam, and here today are our strategists, Brian Robinson and Tharon Johnson. Hello to you. Good to see you. We haven't taped in a while. We've been going live on Morning Edition because this political news has been unfolding, right? Lightning strikes, one after the other.
It's more than you can keep up with. Tharon and I are together every night talking politics, and I thought we're never going to have enough to talk about. But boy, it goes by in a second because there's just so much happening in Georgia right now.
Yeah, and Tharon, you're out of town taping today?
Yeah, well, for me, and B-Rob knows this, most of us consultants, lobbyists, June is the beginning of conference season for us. So that's been sort of a challenge with us with breaking news, with politics, but also trying to do conferences. Lisa, I am in Washington, D.C., where last night I just sent you guys the pictures where we celebrated the life and legacy of John and Lillian Miles Lewis Foundation. And I sat at the table with Speaker Pelosi, had a great conversation with her.
Really? Wow. What is she saying about slowing down?
Well, she really, you know what? She didn't want to, because usually I always remind her, I was like, hey, Speaker Pelosi, do you remember when you came to Congressman Lewis's house a few days before he passed away? And she said, I do remember that. And she spent an entire day with Congressman Lewis, them just reflecting and talking. And that's usually what we talk about every year when we do this gala. But this year, no, she wanted to know what's up with Georgia. Like, are we going to, we're going to send John back and, will we win the governor's race? And then she, of course, talked about redistricting. But I'm going to tell you, she was fired up and was very just optimistic about Democrats' future to not only take back the House, but she believes that we will not only win the House back, she thinks that we'll probably pick up some seats in the Senate, and she's very hopeful about the presidential election. But the star of the evening was not Governor Wes Moore, it was his wife, Dawn Moore, who has a lot of Atlanta connections, and she got the Lillian Miles Lewis Librarian sort of Service Award, and that was amazing. Spent a lot of time with them at the head table, and it was just great to be around so many people who are fighting for civil justice, civil rights, and equal rights in this country.
That's awesome. And it's so good to see his legacy live on. The Atlanta Civic Circle has shuttered due to a lack of funds and advertising, just a sign of the times. And Saba Long, who headed the nonprofit news outlet, is frequently on here filling in as a guest contributor. And, it's just kind of sad to see, like one after the other, the AJC, no longer paper format, and now the Atlanta Civic Circle. So it truly is a sign of the times, isn't it?
Oh, it is. And it's such a concern, particularly if you do what I do for a living, or I made a living in earned media, and those outlets have dwindled, and what are left don't have the resources or the personnel they used to have. And I never really understood the Atlanta Civic Circle's business model. You mentioned it's a nonprofit. I never knew where the money came from. It was always a bit of a mystery to me. But I do know that they produce real journalism. And of course, the great Saba Long is just a consummate professional and really does have a heart for this community and some of the issues that the Atlanta Civic Circle focused on, particularly on housing, which is one where she and I have a lot of crossover. I believe
that was the
very
go-to
firmly
to get the latest on housing affordability and issues, related to Atlanta.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't say we always agreed on the solutions, but the Atlanta Civic Circle and I think, have something in common. Saba Long and I have something in common, and that is a belief in the American dream, and that getting your foot on the ladder of wealth creation through homeownership is an important part of what has made America work and what makes it great. And I think we're losing that. And I hate to see us lose the Atlanta Civic Circle on top of that. I think we're going to see long-term repercussions from the loss of these journalistic outfits.
Yeah, it really is some interesting times when it comes to that.
Well, Lisa, when I actually saw the news, I immediately reached out to Saba and let her know that it was very sad to see that after 4 years of, as B. Rob mentioned, doing excellent work, not just talking about housing, but this has had become a watchdog group. I mean, one of the stories that I remember reading just last week was a story about Atlanta City Hall and about whether or not, they were doing what they needed to do around the neighborhood revitalization initiative. And of course, the mayor came out with a big announcement saying they had kind of scaled it back and was doing that, but also the election coverage that they were doing, going deep analysis into the outcomes of those elections, finding good journalists who still want to write, who still have a passion about healthcare, public safety, education, housing. Where do they go now? And so that's one of the things that I've been talking to a lot of other publishers and people in the industry about. And so these are just hardworking, talented women and men who are available. And so there will be some good talent coming out of the Atlanta Civic Circle. And I'm sure that those people will land somewhere good.
Yeah. All right. Well, our hearts are with them for this very sad day, sad week for the Atlanta Civic Circle. Let's get to politics. A lot has been churning, especially when it comes to Keisha Lance Bottoms. The endorsements are rolling in there. And what is that signaling? A united Democratic Party, I would think.
Well, I was one of the things that I had a chance to do by being in Washington, D.C. at the John Lewis and Lillian Miles Lewis Gala was to spend a great time talking to Senator John Ossoff. And B. Rob, he instantly said, "Yeah, man, I hear you down there. I see you and B. Rob talking about me." And, so just know that he's watching and he gets all the clips every day. I complimented him, Lisa, and I said, "You know what, Senator, I am so happy to see that you and Keisha Lance Bottoms came together, and the word on the front of the dais that they were speaking from in big letters were united." And that's essentially what we are as Democrats right now. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not like Democrats, because what's going to happen to Republicans out here, they about to be in their feelings after June 16th. We got in our feelings a little after May 19th. But now everybody's got their feelings out the way. We all are united in one mission, that is to win in November. I think the other thing that what you see with Rob Pitts, who you mentioned, Lisa, to me before we came on air, endorsing Keisha Lance Bottoms' race for governor, I think that he realizes what I've said, that there's a strong contingency of Black women out here that are going to go back and vote early. By the way, as you're listening to this, in some counties, not all, early voting starts on Saturday, this Saturday, and then it'll go, the following week. So she's got the endorsement, she's got the momentum. The Democratic Governors Association is on the ground. You got all of these fundraisers and all these different people who are coming together to really analyze, how she can win this race come November. And the fact that her and Senator Ossoff are united. But the other thing I want to say really quickly, shout out to Charlie Bailey over the Democratic Party of Georgia, because they were prepared for this moment to basically come together with the two campaigns. I'm hearing that the coordinated campaign is off and running. They're raising money. They're in the fields. They're knocking on doors. They're getting a Democratic message out. So Keisha Lance Bottoms is in a good position, but she's got to raise a lot of money, because whether it's Jackson or Jones, they're not going to have a money problem. They're going to have plenty of money. So she's got to raise the money, keep her profile high, and continue to reach out to people to build a winning coalition.
Brian, take us to the Republican side. We've got a runoff coming up June 16th. What is it feeling like to you in terms of momentum for either candidate?
Well, I can't pretend to be an objective observer here. Obviously, I am a consultant for the Rick Jackson campaign. And today is one of those rare days where I'm sitting here in my home office during the day as opposed to being on the road with Rick Jackson. I was with him in Walton County and Augusta on Tuesday. I'll be with him in Savannah on Thursday, and then we'll have events going in through the weekend. So all jets are firing in this campaign. And I will say, in the spirit of fairness, that is true for Burt Jones as well. I know that he had a very early morning on Wednesday going and doing Fox and Friends, which is a great hit for somebody running in a Republican primary. Lots of Georgia Republicans watching that. And I think right now you got to think, I can't talk about internal polling, but I can talk about what has been released publicly. And I think the public polling after the primary on May 19th showed Burt kind of keeping a lead similar to what he had in the electoral margins on May 19th, about 6 points. And since then, Rick Jackson has closed that gap and now has opened a small lead. Everything that we've seen publicly has been within the margin of error. But as Tharon knows, what matters there is the momentum, the movement. And the movement does seem to be going toward Rick. Now, I don't think anybody on the Rick Jackson team feels confident about an inside the margin of error lead. You're going to want to see, particularly against somebody with the Trump endorsement, somebody who has some of the advantages of incumbency, even though he's not the governor. He is sort of the, the heir to the throne as lieutenant governor. You want to see a lead that's a little bit bigger going into the runoff day than what we have right now. If you're going to start to feel really confident, because if there are any undecideds, and right now there aren't many left, and of those, I don't think many of them will show up if they're not determined who they're going to vote for just yet. The Jackson folks could run the risk of people going, well, I'll vote for the known quantity, the guy who's been around. And the Jackson folks need people who want to see an outsider, who want to see a change from the insider in this election. So that's got to be the mindset that the Jackson folks want. And I want to say on the Democrat side, I'm not impressed at all by anybody endorsing the nominee after the primary. I mean, big whoop. That doesn't show much of anything, right? It's a bigger deal if they don't, right? I do think it'll be curious to see the relationship between Keisha and Stacey. Look, on Political Breakfast, your go-to source for what the internal factions are in the Democratic Party is Tharon Johnson, not Brian Robinson, right? They don't call me and air the dirty laundry about the factions within the party. But I think it's fairly well known that Abrams and Bottoms are from different factions of the Democratic Party. They've been part of different factions within the city of Atlanta's politics through the years. They're not close. And Abrams, I think, is an important person for Keisha Lance Bottoms because she holds the key to a lot of fundraising. We've never seen Keisha Lance Bottoms, despite having all of these national connections, despite her connection to President Biden, despite her connection to the Atlanta business community from being Atlanta mayor. We've never seen her be a prolific fundraiser, which you have to be. Tharon just gave us some intel there that the Democratic Governors Association is on the ground. That's news to me, and that's a good little scoop there by Tharon. DGA cannot carry the water for Keisha Lance Bottoms and the Georgia Democrats. She's got to go and raise it. She's got to be the tip of the sword. There aren't many people who can help her. Two of them are Stacey Abrams and Raphael Warnock, both of whom are accomplished fundraisers. And, with Warnock, all he ever did was turn on the contribution link on his website and the money just kind of came in. Abrams built a national system of bringing in money. So if they come in to help Keisha, that, not endorsements, it is if Warnock and Abrams get in the trenches and start raising money for Keisha, that means something.
Well, I can't confirm that what DGA is doing on the ground. Let me be very clear. But I know that when I say on the ground, meaning that they have been watching this primary election that happened on May 19th. So now that she won it without a runoff, they have to be somewhat on the ground, metaphorically, meaning that they got to put together the structure to try to win this race. But I also want to respond to what B-Rob said about Senator Raphael Warnock and Stacey Abrams. Senator Raphael Warnock did come out and endorse Keisha Lance Bottoms. He also endorsed Josh McLaurin, who's in a competitive runoff with Nabila Parks. He also endorsed Tanya Miller, who is the Attorney General nominee on the Democratic side. And then he also endorsed Judge Penny Brown Reynolds, who's in a competitive runoff for Secretary of State. And, of course, he endorsed his sidekick, John Ossoff. Stacey Abrams, of course, is going to play a major role in this as well. So I can't confirm, B-Rob, that the senator and the former gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams have spoken. But what I can confirm is that we are united, meaning I will make a bold prediction that you will see Raphael Warnock on the campaign trail with John Ossoff, Keisha Lance Bottoms, and the entire ticket. And I will make another bold prediction that you will see Stacey Abrams on the stumping for these candidates for the entire ticket. She's already endorsing in the Secretary of State's race, and she's also endorsed in the Lieutenant Governor's race. So there's no way you endorse and run off and disappear. And then the last thing, let me just clear this up because, Lisa, we've been down this road before. So just like Democrats, Republicans have issues with each other too, right?
Sure.
And
Yeah,
what,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I hate a
And
lot of
what,
people. I
yeah.
hate, and a lot of people, and a
But
lot of
here's the
people hate
difference.
me. Just look at the
They
memes made about me on
They do.
social
They do.
media.
They do. And so, okay, so let's get it out here on political breakfast.
Oh my
Republicans
God.
have probably
One of you
more
being a
beef.
traitor. That one was pretty funny.
Yes,
Oh yeah, they look, and Lisa,
yes.
and this is
Okay.
the thing: Republicans have more beef with each other than the
Hmm.
Democrats do. Here's the
I don't
difference.
know. I don't know.
No,
That is
no,
a bold claim. That's a bold claim there.
man. I told you, B-Roy, I've been going to these conferences. I was down the weekend for wildlife. I would be at
Yeah,
the chamber event today, but I had to
yeah.
make sure I honor my hero. They have more beef with each other and than Democrats. Here's the difference, though, and I'm gonna compliment Republicans. They talk about it at conferences. They may talk about it in the back room of a golf club or on a PJ, but they usually, most times, come out in a united front. What we're going to do as Democrats is, yeah, I mean, there's some past elections there. There's some past beef where people felt like, you didn't endorse me or I endorsed you. Like, we got to get over that. We got to, understand that feelings right now cannot be paramount. What's got to be paramount is winning elections. And so, Keisha Lance Bottoms is the gubernatorial nominee. John Ossoff is our Senate nominee. They're going to have meetings and meetings and meetings with everyone around the state, and I guarantee you're going to see us come out united, and everyone's got to be willing to be utilized appropriately. Not everyone can do everything. Now, one of the things I did share with the senator, and he beefed up a little bit too, B. Rob. I was like, Senator, you working out? And he's like, yeah, I'm working out.
It's
But
not just good
and
hair. It's
no,
not-
not just good hair anymore, man. And I sent you guys. I mean, he got a little taller too, or maybe I've gotten shorter. But we're looking eye to eye now. But what the senator understands, and Keisha Lance Bottoms understands, is that everyone has got to have stake in the game. So whether you're a consultant, a field organizer, a pollster, data creator, if you live in Georgia, they got to make sure that Georgia-based consultants who know how to win are on the team. And I think the senator, the Democratic Party of Georgia, and the Bottoms campaign understand that clearly.
Let's pause for a moment and take a break. We'll be right back. Let's go under the Gold Dome and talk state politics for a minute. Brian, there's word that Republicans are having some mixed feelings about redrawing Georgia district lines. Is that the vibe you are getting?
Look, there is a lot of internal discussion there certainly happening because this is big stakes. This is very meaningful. And I do think that that's how I would frame it, that there are a lot of internal discussions. The redistricting got put on the call, and that is the agenda items. The governor has the sole discretion to decide what goes on the agenda items for the special session. And, certainly there is discussion about the political ramifications of this. Hey, look, let's be honest. If Democrats could redraw the lines and pick up some Democrat seats, they would want to do it. Republicans would love to redraw the lines and pick up seats as well. Obviously, the Sanford Bishop district in southwest Georgia is the obvious target for that. He's been resilient. He has had serious Republican challengers through the years in a rural district that is difficult for Democrats to hold, but he has. So a redraw, though, that, kind of changed the lines around some urban centers there, like, goes up into Macon and Columbus, and getting it into some Republican areas could shift some voters around and make that district, winnable by a Republican. So that is certainly a tempting thing for Republicans. One of the questions being raised, and I'm not spilling any tea here from behind closed doors, I think this conversation has been had out in the public, is why not wait until after the election in 2026 if we're going to draw for 2028? If you're going to take the political hit for redrawing in the middle of the decade, then just put the pedal to the metal and do it for 2026 the way some other states like Louisiana are doing right now. I know South Carolina and Alabama are looking at such maneuvers as well. That would be very difficult. I think Governor Kemp knows that doing it for 2026, after we've already had a primary, would be really, really bad politics in Georgia. But the question being raised is, why do this in June as opposed to after the November election where the politics won't be as important?
In case you don't know, Governor Brian Kemp has called a special session to redraw district lines following a recent ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court on the Voting Rights Act. So, Tharon, I'm going to ask you to expound on that thought, that Republicans are now having mixed feelings. The word is they're having mixed feelings because the fear is that it'll drive the Democratic vote and make it even stronger. What are your thoughts?
Yes, that's exactly it. And everything that B. Rob said, I know it puts him in a sort of a tough position there, but that's why we come on this podcast to give our listeners sort of inside information. But yeah, but the perspective that I'm hearing from some Republicans, not a lot, some Republicans, is that, okay, we started redrawing lines the day after what is going to be a contentious Republican runoff on both sides. And somebody's going to get their feelings hurt. There's winners and there's going to be losers. Then we come right back around and we start having a conversation about maps and then legal lawsuits and all these different things. It's going to fire up the Democratic base. And there may be an opportunity for them to encourage people to say, hey, look at what Republicans are doing to our districts. This is unfair. This is unjustified. And it can create a momentous moment for Democrats to come out, and independents and moderates who will start paying closer attention to partisan redistricting and gerrymandering. So, we'll see what happens. But the fact that we're talking about it now in early June gives the Republicans an opportunity to prepare for that happens. But I think, remember, we said this, Lisa, when the governor called a special session, it wasn't just all welcome with, open arms by everybody. There were some Republicans kind of saying, man, do we have to go back? And I think B-Rob just said it clearly. Could we go back in November versus June and just deal with it then? But the one saving grace for Republicans, I think they'll be able to message is that this doesn't take effect until 2028. But most people won't hear that. What they'll hear and see is a partisan battle legally and through advocacy down at the state capitol during the special session, where Democrats are going to definitely push back strongly against these redistricting efforts.
At least I just want to say, I do think that this internal conversation that we're having at the Gold Dome is a healthy conversation, right? It's good for people to debate and show the pluses and minuses of certain ideas. And that's all you're seeing here. At the end of the day, Governor Kemp is a very powerful leader who has a lot of political capital. Though, as it begins to decline as you get into your last year, as we're in now, that's true for anybody, but still maintains very strong popularity. So his voice is going to be very important in this, but it'll be curious to see if those conversations that Tharon's hearing from these political folks and from legislators, if that stays behind closed doors, or if you begin to see that in media discussion, if you begin to see that on the floor of the House and Senate, having those opinions aired, that would be, for those of us who love politics, that's some great political theater, and we would all enjoy being on the front row for it.
Well, the governor's voice was heard last night at midnight. He announced he is not extending the gas tax suspension. People are rushing to fill up before we start seeing those prices creep up again.
Yes.
I want to ask both of you, who is it going to hurt? Is it going to hurt Republicans in the long run? Is it going to hurt Democrats in any way?
When word came out this week that the suspension was going to end, we saw in my neighborhood in Brookhaven, you saw the line waiting to get to the Costco gas, which is the cheapest gas inside the perimeter.
Absolutely.
Going out almost to Peachtree Road, which for those of you who are familiar, know that's a pretty long ways, and that's never been seen.
There's always a line at Costco, but not that long, right?
No,
right.
And the line generally can be held in the parking lot there for the gas portion of the store. This was down the road, and so people were
every penny
makes
a difference. I mean, that's where we are right now. Every penny makes a difference.
33 cents a gallon, it adds up to a lot more than pennies, obviously,
right.
when you put 16, 20 gallons into the car. So it does matter, and I think that we just talked about the special session. The first suspension was passed by the House and Senate during the legislative session. I have no doubt that some enterprising legislator is going to cause some noise about extending it or creating a new suspension when they come back at the end of the month, particularly if gas prices continue where they are, which, that's how the markets work. We don't have an immediate change. Even if the Strait of Hormuz situation got cleared up, it takes a little while for the supply chain to get back to normal. So we're going to have high prices for a little bit. I could see this being a political issue In the end of the month, we've already seen Keisha Lance Bottoms seize on this and say that she opposes ending the suspension. I would imagine that if you asked Republican candidates who are in runoffs, they would say that they are for extending the suspension, because this is one of the kitchen table issues that is on the cutting edge for Georgians right now. And it's a way of signaling that you care about the crunch that people are feeling and that you have empathy and understanding of how hard it is to pay for the prices at the pump right now. So yes, this is a hugely important political item. And I do want to remind folks, though, that I understand where Governor Kemp is coming from. We have lost $200 million in revenue, and that revenue, it doesn't go into general funds. It goes directly into repaving the roads, to building bridges, to building new roads. It goes directly into the infrastructure that we all rely on. And I think, as we all know, we have grown so much, 1 million people every 10 years, that our infrastructure cost over the next 25 years, from here to 2050, will be north of $50 billion if we really want to get done everything we want to get done and keep up with growth. We've got to pay for it. And this is one of the mechanisms we use to pay for it. Governor Kemp did add some general fund revenue into some projects this past year, making 316 on the way to Tharon's mama's house, limited access, and adding another lane to the hot lane down through Henry County on I-75. So there are other methods, but this gas tax revenue is hugely important to how we build our future here.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. The road products around Atlanta are oh my gosh.
Well, they can never keep up. It's never enough.
They make you hyperventilate.
Yeah, but it's worse than the alternative of doing nothing. Right?
And doing nothing. You're right.
Better than the alternative. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll say real quick. Listen, I think that President Trump's lack of leadership on dealing with the issue in Iran is one of the reasons why we're seeing high gas prices. We got to go there. And Trump has put every single governor, women and men across the country, in a very, very tight situation with them having to extend the gas tax. So now Governor Kemp is going to not extend the gas tax, and people are losing their you-know-what. You see the long lines at Walmart, Costco, Kroger over by where I live. I mean, you can't even get off the actual road because the lines are out the door. And so this is going to definitely hurt Republicans. But real quick, guys, as we are taping, there is going to be a press conference today by District Attorney in DeKalb County, Sherry Boston. And we've all heard how there was going to be legal action taken about the governor signing HB 369. This was the bill that targeted 5 counties that are Democratic strongholds. And so she's announcing the lawsuit today. She's going to be the sole plaintiff. She's leading a team of plaintiffs that will come out later. And then here are the 3 sort of grounds for the lawsuit. One, they believe that HB 369 is a violation of Georgia's uniformity clause. The second thing is that it's a violation of the Georgia and U.S. equal protection clauses. And then lastly, it's a violation of Georgia's rejected bill clause. So that is going to happen. Very interested to see what's going to be said by the district attorney. I think this will also, Lisa, play a part leading up to the special session, where you'll see Democrats use this as an issue, and along with others, QR codes and other things that are going to come up, redistricting, to really push the public to learn more about this particular bill. So shout out to the district attorney in DeKalb County for leading this effort.
All right. So you heard it here first, and I'm sure there'll be more to talk about when we convene next week. So thank you all for checking in and as always, giving your perspective here on Political Breakfast on WABE.